All right, just dusting the ashes off last week's conversation.
We're still a bit scorched.
Appreciating all the feedback for that. We'll learn better.
You will learn better.
Yeah, true.
Speak
I
for yourself.
shouldn't throw you under the bus. You were fair and reasoned.
We've talked about that on Honor and Shame. Don't make me guilty by
mate,
association.
I set up the framework by which I can find redemption. So
Exactly.
I don't feel bad.
You're welcome back on my island anytime.
Anytime, man.
Yep.
Anytime. You got to deal with me. Okay, so this week we are talking about dating
I love walks on the beach, moonlit dinners.
as two guys.
Who haven't dated for a long time.
The last time I went on a date, 2000 and we're talking about pre-marriage.
Well, I guess technically your last date was the last time you saw Carly before you get married.
Okay,
I
so
suppose.
2005.
Okay, so I'm 2008.
So my son refers to that as the olden times.
Yes,
Which I'm still personally offended by.
the olden times.
Yeah, so this will be interesting. So I feel like
And
there's...
it's partly a listener request as well. That's part of why we don't claim to be lords of dating capability.
Can I just claim obnoxious ignorance to this? And that I will...
It always works. It's a good look on you.
Yeah,
you wear
okay.
it well.
Great, all right. I'm going to be obnoxiously ignorant, and I will start by saying I do not envy an individual who is trying to date in this modern climate.
Well, I look back on my own, dating adventure, which was, hardly illustrious, let's be honest. So I had one fairly long-term relationship. We broke up. Then I had another long-term relationship, which turned out to be my wife. So that's my dating history.
Yep.
I'm 1 for 2. But frankly, I was a terrible dater in the sense of, as a Christian, panicky. I'm never going to get married. Everyone around me is getting married, and I'm like 23. Woe is me. So I just look back on it and go, I had such a bad framework. Through dating.
Which is ridiculous, because if you're like a 6 out of 10 and you're a male who can hold down a conversation within a church,
I didn't know that though.
you are hot property.
Yeah. I mean, yes. So you're tapping into the fact that, and I don't have the exact numbers, but statistically, there are more Christian young women in churches than Christian men.
It's like a 60-40 split.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. So if you're a dude in the church and you ain't a 3-legged donkey, you've got every chance of probably finding a partner and getting married.
You've just condemned every single male listening to this podcast.
Who's single?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you might have well, first of all, I would say this is that this is really only one part of the conversation, because if you've got that charismatic gift of singleness in the Lord,
Sure.
then honoring that is really important.
Yeah, which is a genuine.
So you might
teaching in
be
Scripture.
just a dude who's decided in the Lord to live a single life, in which case I rejoice in that and celebrate that.
And don't forget
female as well.
Timing as well. Like, just because I'm not married now doesn't mean I won't be married ever, right?
But
yes, I want to say yes. That is part of it, but also just because someone is currently single does not mean they necessarily have that charismatic gift.
But the implication there would be that they should be getting married.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just my understanding is the charismatic gift of singleness it's almost like a pledge and a commitment to that.
Yeah.
Whereas you can be,
which we should honor, regardless.
Absolutely.
So I would just remove that last part and say, like, celebrate that singleness.
Correct. I agree. I think there's another category of person, which I think would be the majority of people, which is I'm going to learn to be content in my singleness, but I would like to be married at some point, but that may not be guaranteed.
Yeah, I'm not there.
What do you mean?
No, I just don't think as Christian churches we've done a healthy exploration of singleness in a way.
Yeah.
I think there's a delight and a joy that exists in that framework that we don't necessarily have because we're married couples.
Well, I actually think that my observation in churches has been that, like when you and I were in that kind of 18 to 23 range, it was pretty bad.
It was all a push towards marriage.
Totally.
Yeah.
I see younger people now in churches with I think we've done better work in the last 20 years. I don't know if we're there yet.
Yeah.
But I think there's a healthier view towards singleness now than there was when we were kind of going through in that stage.
This is going to be a rare moment, so clip this. But the pastor at Church by the Bridge, Paul,
Paul Dale.
has probably been the best pastor who I've ever seen kind of expound singleness in a godly framework that has been really healthy because he lived it.
Yep.
And I would say he's the guy that I would go, there's the church that has led the way in this in a healthy way. I'm not there. I got married young. So I just don't, like, I need a single human coming alongside of me saying, hey, these are the things that
Totally
would be helpful.
Yep.
Anyway, we're talking about dating.
And yet we're talking about it. So let's start with, I guess, what have we seen done well in churches with dating? You've kind of alluded to it. You mentioned Paul. Like, what struck you about his angle here that you hadn't heard before?
Oh, that was more a singleness conversation, or are we doing dating? Which one?
Oh, that's true.
Okay.
No, that's true.
Well, I think narrative around dating has one. It's not like, I don't think there's a biblical framework for this, by the way, in the sense of marriages scripturally were arranged at the age of like 12, 13. So, a girl hits puberty and suddenly your dads are hanging out with another dad for an eligible bachelor and your wedding's getting decided.
Yeah, so we best guess we think Mary, the mother of Jesus, was somewhere between 13 and 14 years old when she was betrothed to Joseph.
Who's probably 18, 19. Okay.
At best guess, yeah.
Yeah. So our framework for whatever Christian dating is instituted based on characteristics of holy Christian living, right?
Rather than biblical precedent.
Yeah, because
culture has shaped the way we date.
Yeah, so this is a response to culture.
Yep.
So we say stuff like be wise, and we've got a framework that I think, around purity culture that we've spoken to before that wasn't particularly healthy, but there is elements whereby we can look at parts of scripture and say, this is good, this is bad. I don't know the places, honestly, that we did it well. I went to a church to meet girls and find one that was good and marry her. So I had an agenda. And what I wanted to do was kiss some girls. And that was because I was a snot-headed teenager not listening to my pastor.
And just to kind of pause, what was wrong with that?
Well, because I just wanted to kiss girls.
And what was wrong with that?
Well, I don't know if that's particularly helpful, but like I was like...
I agree. It's but I just want to like pause and go, okay, why, what, clearly something's missing there in that.
I went to an all boys school.
Yeah.
Like I was surrounded by a bunch of dudes who wanted to hook up with girls, and that, like every guy has this at some stage. You stop being into Voltron and you start to be into the girl next door.
Now you're really showing your age.
No,
Voltron
okay.
reference.
Well, you stop being into flipping Yu-Gi-Oh.
Watching the Andy Griffith Show.
And you start going, oh wow, she's cute.
Yep.
How do I get to hang out with her? And so there's
which is not wrong,
right?
Right, like
so
that's part of a puberty-based
God
process.
gave you those feelings that you are now interested in women. I think there's a how do I honor my sister in Christ that is a healthy thing, but there's an influence of pornography and unhealthy dating practices that really clouds and taints our idea of dating and expectations and a whole bunch of different things, sexuality. And so that's where I think it's a really murky, cloudy area to play from.
And I think the pornography not that it's a revolution, but the rise of pornography, my observation, and please have a younger person, write in and tell me this is wrong if it is. I suspect that the rise of pornography, like your attitude was, how do I find a girl here? The rise of pornography has made us more and more consumers, and it's like, which girl will appeal to everything that I want? Like, I think pornography is actually reducing our ability to date or our desire to date.
It's rewiring our brain to an outcome.
Correct.
Like, I want to hook up, have sex, and feel that gratification because that's what I've experienced through pornography.
Or I think the other one is, I will not date anyone who's not a 10.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think therefore, I think one of the things that's happened is we may be less willing to commit to each other because of pornography, because we're realizing that nobody's a 10. And so therefore,
Well, the shape of pornography, like back when I was at school, pornography was in a magazine.
yeah.
So if you wanted to get a hold of pornography, you either had to find your dad's stash or your older brother's stash, or you had to go into a newsagent, go to the sealed section, pick up a copy of that, take that to the front counter, and interact with a human to buy that copy. Who then would ask you if you wanted a paper bag to put that in before you walked home with a magazine in a paper bag. Being stopped by a friend, hey, what's in the bag? Do you know what I mean? Like you had to be invested into
access has just
and
become,
access has completely shifted.
which is terrible.
Yeah, it's like a zero-sum game. You almost had to own your pornography addiction back in the day, as opposed to now where you can just keep it secret and potentially no one will ever know about it.
And my point is, I think
That's super unhealthy.
That's
Both
played
of
a
them.
significant factor in dating, Christian dating,
Yeah, absolutely.
relationships with people generally. And I think the manifestation here is what I think I observe as a pastor is it's led to a decreased appetite to date for two reasons. Number one, I feel crap about myself. I'm in an addiction. How can I date a person when I've got this porn addiction? Number one.
Yeah.
And number two, if I do go through that and go, I will choose to date, I become so picky because I've built up a consumer-based sexuality through a pornography addiction that a real person will never satisfy.
And three, because my brain is now rewired
Sure.
in a way that's unhealthy. And part of the whole journey of dating and sexuality is that it should be a big old process and journey. Like that's part of the joy of it.
Okay, so we're talking about the negatives of it. What, if not seen in practice, I guess in theory?
Oh, okay. Should we talk positives?
Please,
Okay.
I would like that.
So I actually really love the framework for online dating.
Okay.
Because you can actually put in likes and dislikes. You can put in places for similarity and commonality because that's really important. Shared affinities over things is a really good thing. And so you can get this really healthy framework whereby an algorithm can match you with someone who's probably going to be a complementary partner for you. I think that's awesome. I didn't have that. I saw Carly at a Big Day Out festival and she was covered in another person's sweat between mosh pits. And I thought to myself, she seems pretty good. That was my...
Who was playing? Do you remember?
I think we'd just come out of... was it Limp Bizkit?
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
Fred Durst with his red cap backwards.
Yeah.
Big Day Out was a music festival for those younger than ourselves.
Yeah. And so
New Year's Day? Was it New Year's Day? Anyway, that's irrelevant.
I don't know.
I'm just reminiscing now.
Yeah, but that's like... That's my experience of dating, right? So I kind of look at this and go, so hold on, you can plug in your likes and dislikes. You can fudge photographs, but we fudge stuff we've been fudging stuff in dating forever. Like we always, when we date, bring our A+ to the table.
Yep.
But when we're married, everyone gets to see your D game.
Yep.
And so I don't really have an issue with you having fish in your profile photos and you airbrushing that because that's you just trying to bring your A+ to the table.
Yeah.
And I get that and I appreciate that.
Yeah, look,
it's not truthful. It's not reality.
It's not false though.
Yeah.
It's grey.
You're just trying to bring the best part of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's noble.
Yeah, I actually tend to agree with you. I missed online dating. Like we were pre-online dating, at least in Christian online dating, certainly. I actually think in theory it's an incredible innovation. It's one of the greatest gifts the internet has given us.
Yeah.
To break down the ambiguity of dating, to I guess use the algorithm to find compatibility, as you say. I've heard it challenged with younger people I've spoken about that it does create a bit of a consumer meat market.
Yep.
Which I can imagine being the case. I hadn't thought about that angle before, but overall, I think on balance,
Which, by the way, the Greenwood was like that on a Friday night, which was the local North Sydney dance place you went to.
That's a word. That's a name I haven't heard for a long time.
That was the equivalent real life meat market experience.
Yeah.
Or any of the EDM dance concerts you went to in town, meat market again.
Yeah, it's true.
But you were relying there on random chance and happenstance. And
Yes.
so I like the fact that you've got this algorithm and you've now got this exposure to a much wider group of women, is that it gives you an opportunity to find a better match. That's a nice thing
Yeah, I
at its heart.
I tend to agree with you. I think so. One of the messages here is, I think, because I have had people ask me, what do you think as a pastor about online dating? My general response is go for it.
Yeah.
I think definitely use a Christian online dating platform. I think I would, I guess this is a separate conversation, but I would strongly advocate for entering into a dating relationship with someone of the same faith. I would not prescribe that 100%. I think there are exceptions to that. But if we just looked at an ideal situation that you were trying to, in inverted commas, engineer, I would say go for the Christian first and foremost. So therefore, use the Christian dating app first.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I'm not super big fan if you're on Tinder, like
Gotcha, yeah.
trying to hook up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you've missed the point of dating there.
Okay, well, nice segue, Duncan. What is the point of dating?
I think it's an elongated compatibility assessment. It's a
Thanks, Arnie.
it's a
It's such a clinical answer.
No.
But it's true.
you mate. You're doing marriage on training wheels, right? Like you want to learn to ride a bicycle, but the way that you learn to ride a bicycle is you pop some training wheels on, or maybe you're on a three-wheeled trike. And you're just figuring it out. Is this a thing? Is it a good thing? But because of that, I think that there probably needs to be some healthy parameters.
Okay, so this is, I think, in Christian culture where we repeatedly see the mistake made of, to put it another way, we've gone on 2 dates, we're now moving towards marriage. I think is a classic Christian stereotype where a lot of weight comes in very early, and therefore, if the relationship doesn't work out, again, let's assume it's not online and let's assume it's 2 people in a church, young people. That has a way of causing crisis in a community. One person might have to leave the church because it's too hard. So I think that question around how much emotional weight to put into a dating relationship is a really significant conversation in Christianity.
Okay.
Because to play the stereotype, we start thinking about marriage way earlier than our non-Christian friends in the world.
Yes. But that's because we probably have a much different assessment of dating.
Go on.
Well, because I think I'm going to approach this from a point of view of sexuality, right? Is that what I have often seen, because, I spent a lot of time in a mixed martial arts gym surrounded by a whole bunch of non-Christian people, is that there's a lot of sex that happens before marriage.
Yep.
And as you get married, the sex slowly dwindles.
For most Christian couples,
On some levels, there's a respect and a reverence for sex. So I'll say there's much less sex that happens before marriage because there's a holiness undertone that happens. And so when we get married, there's an explosion of sex that grows. It grows in shape and form. And so the question is we got like hooking up with as many people as possible, then marrying, settle down, having children, and that usually drops you off the cliff of sex for a season. And so you just can't become okay with having way less sex after you're married, or for a Christian term, way less sex before marriage, and then there's this explosion and suddenly delight in it that grows, and you go, they're 2 very different comprehensions of how that's going to play out. And so therefore relationally, there's a big impact to that.
Yep.
Is that you probably have much stronger framework about sexuality before you get married as a Christian, whereas a non-Christian, you have a framework whereby we will have sex, but that's not going to take place until after the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th date.
Yep.
And so that's a big area of difference.
I mean, what it does do, and I agree with you, and I'll talk about, I think, the strengths of the Christian ethic there in a minute. But I guess the criticism of it is you're going to get married way too soon because you just want to have sex.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we put a lot of weight on dating early in Christian culture, perhaps unhelpfully. Like we don't date lightly, I don't think.
Well, I mean, my counterpoint would be, I think in Australia we have babies way too late.
Okay. Yep. There's another part of the conversation.
right? I mean, the fact that you can go into a hospital now as a 40-year-old pregnant woman and they go, you're having a geriatric pregnancy, probably suggests that we're putting off this conversation until much later.
So are you saying, therefore,
Get married young. Absolutely.
really? That is what you're saying? You
Yeah.
think
Mate, I just
Christian hasteness is a good thing in dating?
I feel like you could find a place in scripture where it speaks to that.
Okay.
And says, hey man, if you can't control yourself, get married. Feel like that's Paul.
Well, actually, that's the passage he says that is around the gift of singleness. If you can't, if you don't have that gift,
Get
therefore
married.
marriage is the logical
It's the,
solution to that problem.
so yes, some people get married way too young. I agree.
But your point is, in secular culture, many people are getting married way too old.
Yep.
Yep.
So
fair
I think
enough.
I think there's a heavy counterpoint to that. I think if if I had known how much energy was required to have kids and how much of a toll that takes on a body, a younger body is better than an older body to manage that.
Yeah, I feel that as a
And-
younger dad. I'm
but
grateful.
We've created an entire culture where that's not appropriate. And by the way, we also sow this lie that you should have kids later in life so you can get ahead at work,
Yeah.
which is just not true.
Yeah.
I have like a whole community of American friends who had kids at 20. And by the way, their kids are now 20 and out of the house. They're the same age as me. They're living their best life. And I'm still driving my kids to sports.
Yeah,
practice.
so I've thought about, so my oldest will be 18 when I'm 45.
Yeah.
My youngest that are twins will be 18 when I'm 49. So I'll be, and I'm grateful. I like that.
Yeah.
God willing, if I live 80 years, let's play the law of averages. I'll have a lot of really good, healthy years that, I can fly my kites.
That's your Italian heritage coming through
True.
right now.
I'm going to live to
And
105.
Yeah, it'd be fine.
Olive oil.
Mate.
Yeah, it's good. My skin will be glowing.
Hey, Vincenzo!
Yeah, look, I think that's right. And I think the other thing about the multiple sexual partners before marriage, I feel like I just cite Tim Keller every week, but Tim Keller's great.
Go for it. He seems pretty smart on
Look,
some of this.
I actually think his best work that he ever wrote was The Meaning of Marriage, his book.
Okay, yeah.
And actually, he wrote it with his wife, Kathy, and Kathy actually had this quote that, well, actually, before I tell you the quote, what they talk about is the fact that statistically, couples who live together before they get married have a higher rate of divorce than couples who haven't. And Keller just very graciously says, why is that? Because in theory, cohabiting before marriage is a great idea because you're essentially trying before you're buying. It's an insurance policy.
Yeah.
But he said, herein lies the problem. The moment you set up that try before you buy, it's very hard to move out of that, I guess, more consumer mentality once you make the covenant of marriage, if that's the pattern you've set up. Whereas for the Christian, they essentially what the marriage vows are saying, I don't know everything about you yet. There are things in life that are going to be thrown our way, sickness, health, richer, poorer, better, worse.
Yeah.
And yet I will still walk with you in that final day towards the Lord. And so they talk about essentially the compatibility versus commitment paradigm, and that compatibility has importance to your point about online dating. You don't want to find someone you've got no commonality with.
Yeah.
But compatibility has its limitations, and therefore the commitment that you make in those vows are what helps you, to what Tim Keller says, fall in love with your spouse 5 different times throughout your life in different seasons.
Yeah. And that's probably my favorite part of his quote on that is that you choose to get married 5 times. It's just to the same woman.
That's right.
And I think that what we don't do well in dating is communicate that.
Correct.
So what you got now might be a combination of infatuation
Yep.
and hormones and a few other things and your commonalities, right? Oh, we love going to festivals together and rock concerts. Let me tell you, when you have kids, that shifts drastically, and you are now married to Mama Bear Carly. And so I now have to make a conscious decision to be married to Mama Bear Carly, which is why you see divorce at 7 and 21 years spike, by the way.
Because the person you're married to isn't the person
Yep,
Yeah.
they've shifted. So their two key transitional seasons is that Mama Bear Carly will eventually turn into empty nester Carly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to make a decision at 21 years to stay married to her. And then usually after that, you're too old and tired to get separated, but you can.
Yeah.
But yeah, then there's retiree Carly that I've got to make a conscious decision to marry, which is, by the way, probably going to be more in sickness than in health.
Yeah.
And but it's the flip for her too. So she's going to be married to more sick Duncan than in health Duncan. And that's that conscious commitment.
It's the commitment trumping compatibility.
Yeah. And the compatibility stuff, I think, is you're right. It is important.
It is.
But your goal, by the way, is a compliment, not an egotist wants the same person, right? Like I haven't spent a whole bunch of time with Lara, but she ain't you.
No.
And that's her strength.
Yep.
It's great.
Yep.
And so I think you want a person who has very different qualities to you, because that's part of the joy of marriage, is that those differences strengthen you as a couple. What you need is that supernatural impartation of grace and a willingness to commit to help you endure. And if we set up a full framework where it's consumeristic in dating, it's only going to play on into
which
marriage.
actually is one of the inherent challenges with dating is in a way consumeristic by nature, rightly, but at some point you have to make the mental shift away from that to go, no, I think this is the person that I want to commit myself to in sickness and in health for better. And this is the quote I was getting at that I think is genius, which is actually Kathy Keller's quote in the book. You know, everybody wants, it's not a direct quote, sorry, it's a paraphrase. Everybody's looking for Michelangelo's David when they're dating. Instead of looking for Michelangelo's David, look for a block of granite with potential.
Yeah, that's good.
And because over the course of your life, you will chip away at each other, you'll refine each other. That'll often be painful. But at the end of your life, okay, physically you may be gross and saggy and old and whatever.
Yeah.
But spiritually, emotionally, mentally, you are David. You know, you are that chiseled statue that has gone through an incredible amount of difficulty and journey and joys and sadnesses, as the vows say, and you're richer for it, and you're walking hand in hand towards Christ at the end of it. So therefore, I guess this is to say, Christian, when you are dating, how much maturity do you see in that person going forward? I think has to be one of the key questions. How well-rounded are they as a person? How humble are they? How willing are they to reflect and learn? Because that's actually, I think, more important than the initial compatibility that will wane and waver over time.
Yeah. You become a different person.
Yep.
And so it takes me. Carly's going to see Michael McIntyre. I could not care less for that
Oh,
comedian.
you are wrong. She is right.
No,
That dude's awesome.
he's awful.
You're just a jealous stand-up comedian.
Yeah, mate, I wish I had the pull of Mike McIntyre. But, like, we hit a season where we were like, go and enjoy that with your friends.
Yep.
Like, we've got other stuff we can bond over,
Yep.
and that's fine. But
Yep.
I think you still have to consciously find places of commonality that you can celebrate.
Yep.
Because if you don't do that, and that's part of the commitment journey, you end up in a place where you go, we got nothing in common, and I couldn't care for finding something that we do have in common.
Yep.
And that's not healthy.
No.
I think the other thing that I wanted to touch on, where I don't have a framework for this, and it's going to sound like I shouldn't be a pastor. I find it very hard to say to a lady, you should only date Christian guys. And I know scripturally that's hey, let's not unevenly yoke this, but pragmatically,
Yep.
there's way more boys than there are girls for girls to go on dates with. And so there is going to be a larger portion of single women who don't feel like they have that charismatic gift of singleness, who go, I just want a man who's in a relationship. And they find, to your point, a humble, gentle, gracious, trustworthy human who does not love Jesus and says, well, mate, the only other option is the 3-legged donkey on the table. Do you know? You want me to go out with a 4 out of 10.
Yep.
But I got a 7 out of 10 here, who I delight in.
Yep.
I find it really hard saying to that person, whoa, unevenly yoked, get this off the table, come on.
Which, by the way, I'm just typing up now. 2 Corinthians 6 is the passage.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, look, My initial reaction is I haven't thought through this one well enough to have a strong opinion on it. I can only point to experience as a pastor, which is absolutely in an ideal world, having been married to someone who is a fellow believer just sets a foundation that is just way simpler and easier.
Agreed.
I've got friends in church who have married unbelievers who would say that themselves. The marriage works, it's a beautiful marriage, but let's not lie, it creates complications and challenges, priorities, understanding of the world. When you have kids, what do you want for them? That's one of the big flashpoints where it becomes challenging when one of you is a believer and one of you isn't. And I need to work through this, but like my gut says, I don't know if I'd be comfortable making a hard and fast rule though that you must marry a Christian. You're playing the mathematical card and saying it's actually impossible in churches. That's a fair point. Even, I guess my reaction is that what 2 Corinthians 6 is definitely talking about? And frankly, I haven't done enough work in a passage to know it one way or another. But on a pragmatic level, I've seen it work, and I've seen it work beautifully where one person is a believer and one person isn't. But it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I get asked to do a bunch of weddings, and I do very few weddings. They're usually for people that I've known really well in the church or I've known really well in the gym. And I've got a long-standing relationship with both the partners involved, and so I know them well, that I say yes to.
Yep.
And it is one of the things, hey, is one of you like flaming Team Jesus and one of you flaming not Team Jesus?
Yep.
Because that's a big issue.
Yep.
And I may say no.
Yep.
I'm actually looking for any excuse not to marry you, honestly. Just because it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Like, 50% of the time it doesn't work out every time.
Yep.
I still find myself saying, if someone is really passionately for Jesus and one is really passionately against, I just don't think this is going to work.
Yep.
But I find myself, and maybe, I stand before the Lord and ask for forgiveness, but I find myself more going, this person I know really passionately loves Jesus, but the other person just doesn't really care.
Yep. Yeah, look, I think just having a cursory look at 2 Corinthians 6, my initial reaction is I'm not sure it's actually talking about marriage, to be honest with you. And if I can, there's another passage, and I'll have to find it and put it in the notes, but, about a wife winning her husband over for the Lord, as in there's an assumption that one partner may be Christian and one may
Flirt
not
to
be.
Convert.
Sure.
I mean, that's the Hail Mary. When in doubt, you pull out the flirt to convert.
I've seen it work. Yep. One other part of the conversation I want to ask you about actually is, and you alluded to about kind of betrothal age in the first century. And I guess I want to be even a little bit more primal about it. And I really don't mean this insensitively. Like, if we hit reproductive age at, let's say, on average 14, why shouldn't we get married at 14? Like, I know that's a weird thing.
Child protection laws.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, fine.
You got some
why not get married at 18 then?
Yes. Okay. Well, so I think there's a lot of research done on identity formation, suggesting that we've pushed identity formation way back into our 20s, early 30s. And I think that's a bit of a tragedy. I think that, there are healthy listen, culturally for centuries, teenagers have been getting married.
Yep.
And some of those have been hugely successful and healthy marriages. Okay. Like, do Mary and Joseph have a good relationship post Jesus's birth? I'd say yes.
Yep.
Because we've got James, don't we?
Yeah.
Things pan out okay.
Sure.
They end up in a pretty good relationship. By the way, I'm not a hillbilly on this, right?
Yeah.
Like
No, but I just think it's worth at least asking the question rather than assuming I get married at 25 or 30 or 30, whatever age you make.
Yeah, so I feel like what we've done is a disservice to relationships by pushing these things way back into the 30s and 40s. And then you've got all these kind of infertility issues that rear their ugly heads. And you go, man, if we'd just been a little bit bold, a little bit more fearless, a little bit more willing to be surrendered before the Lord on this, then maybe we could get married younger. But the flip side is there's also just a sea of immature guys who don't have these kind of, what is John Eldridge has a really specific term for it, but these coming of age moments, right? So because a guy doesn't have his first period at 12, 13, that for a woman
or
is
ever.
but that's a really
Dudes don't have periods.
it's
Duncan.
a really significant rite of passage. And so what Jewish culture used to do was you have a bar mitzvah,
Yeah, got you.
right? Because guys don't have periods. You're
Yeah.
right. That bar mitzvah is a coming of age moment, and the whole purpose of that is to say to that person, you are responsible for your faith.
Yep.
You are responsible for picking a career, and you are responsible for getting trained in that. It's a big deal. Okay? Guys don't hear that now. Now you can figure it out, date a few people, live in a share house. And like share houses are just, most of the time just a bunch of obnoxious, unformed men who don't have good identities, who want an excuse to stay up late, play computer games and jerk off in the bathroom. Sorry, it's true, isn't it? Like, have you ever been to those places? It's not healthy. It's not good. It's not holy. It's not uplifting. And then you go to the rare examples where you go, oh, okay, these guys have got it all together. They're on a path, right? But most of the time you just want to get out from your parents' authority and do your own thing. And so that's the reason why we keep on pushing it back. Well, I haven't become a man yet. You haven't become a man yet. It's like...
Because you haven't been initiated is your point.
Yeah, right. Whereas like US culture, right? There's a much heavier emphasis on military culture. And guess what that does? That grows you up real quick. And so you have, a guy comes back ex-military, he's 24, 25, and he's like, he's a man, because he's had this transitional moment in life. And I know I can be crude sometimes, but I think we've geared a culture to make these unformed men who don't seem to hit their strides until way later in life, and still want the young virile woman to marry, and it's just unhealthy.
So what do you do about it?
Well, I'd speak against it.
Yep.
Hey, apologies from Duncan for being crude, like
Well,
I
I
said
think-
before, but it's a point.
When we've spoken about this on the masculinity episode, but one of the struggles I think is what you've just said was a large part of Mark Driscoll's message, and Mark Driscoll is now loaded.
Yes.
So it feels it's not a culturally neutral argument to make at this point. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's loaded at this point because it's wrapped up in a lot of what Driscoll was saying about men and manhood.
Okay, so if your desire, I'm going to try and reword it a little bit nicer. If your desire is to get into a share house with a bunch of men with freedom and liberation being the priority, that is not good formational steps.
Yeah. And it won't equip you to be a good husband.
Yep. If your desire is through that liberation, I am learning the ability to budget, save, provide, clean a house, have some responsibilities. But because I'm annoyed with mum and dad's curfew, this is easier done on my own. But in that, I am trying to form myself into all that God has created me to be. That's a much healthier expression.
Yeah, I think that language...
I just don't see it a whole bunch.
No, I get it. I think the language of formation is helpful. And I think coming back to Kathy Keller's idea of the block of granite, like what dating and then through to marriage do is they form you. And so how does a Christian approach dating? It's a formative opportunity before marriage to work out whether you want to be formed with that person that you're dating. Like that, the goal is formation. It's being presented holy and blameless on the final day. And that takes time, it takes energy, it takes process. And so the question has to become in dating, is this the person I'm willing to go through that messy journey with? Not, is this the person who is going to make my life 100% easy and complete?
Oh, mate, she completes me. It's just garbage water, right? Like no one completes.
It should be
you.
she helps me be formed. That's actually the Christian
that's
picture.
Way healthier.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I would like green lights. If you're like, oh, she helps me be formed, and she challenges me in my weakness and points me towards Jesus, and he builds me up and he points me towards Jesus and
Yep.
challenges me in my weakness, and together we find a better path. But sometimes we just have to pause and pray on it. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yep.
I'll bring in the youth pastor now. We just need 2 witnesses. Let's sign these documents.
Which is why commitment has to matter, but it can't be everything because, I say in marriage prep, I go through a course with the people who are engaged. The reality is every couple is going to have something that they're going to have to work on probably the rest of their life. And that something is probably the same thing that's going to rear its head over and over.
Yeah.
For some couples, it's financial management. For some couples, it's conflict resolution. For some, it's, role expectations. But often that's the whole point of formation. It's not that you graduate from one weakness to another. You're often wrestling with the same 2 or 3 things your whole life.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're committed with one another to shaping one another. And to Kathy Keller's point, chipping away at that granite over the course of your life. And so, again, in dating, if you think that person would help you do that and you could do that for them, then I think it's a green light for me, and that's what you should look for.
You realize how much lower the bar is
But
when you say that. No, but when but this is. I think people dating have way too high a bar.
Yep.
What you have described is literally the speed hump that you need to step over.
Yep.
Which is actually probably every single woman, apart from like 3% of the population in your church. That is who you have described.
I would nuance
or
it.
Man.
I would nuance it a little bit and say, like I've heard the argument, just find a godly man, just find a godly woman. Kind of implicitly, physical attraction doesn't mean squat.
No. Physical attraction definitely
It
means
has
something.
to. So so I'd say yes, I agree. I'm lowering the bar, but I've heard it actually lowered too far sometimes, unhelpfully. I think physical attraction has to matter some. Compatibility has to matter some. And once you've got enough, and whatever that enough is, difficult to quantify. But once you've got enough of that, then the question becomes, is this the person that will help me be formed, and can I help form them? Yeah, so it does lower the bar, just not completely.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I look, so I'm still in a circle of friends who all kind of dated from the same pool and all married those women. And I just, I look across the board and I'm like, these are all blue chippers. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, top to bottom, I'm like, just blue chip women as far as the eye can see. And in the moment, I was like, I had a matrix for all the girls and qualities and what I was looking for. I was like, you're such an idiot.
You're saying the pool was much wider than you thought.
Way wider.
Yeah.
And I think that the more I kind of season in marriage, the more I look at stuff and you go, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, you go to this place, I can't find a woman. I'm like, how, you can't do it at a youth group, but you want to be like, hands up who's single. There's your options.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. They're all great.
Yeah.
They're absolutely, all of them are great. And it's this, part of that is falling in love with these people. And some people are like late bloomers and early bloomers. Like, I remember my producer has this incredible husband, but she said to me, late bloomer. It was this tall, skinny dude. Yep. But she saw the potential. And he turned out to be a flippin' Olympic athlete who it looks like he's carved out of granite, to Kathy Keller's point. Mate, that marble shaped up to be some fine Italian.
That was some quick chiseling.
Oh my gosh. But she was just like, saw potential.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you just need to ask the question, can you see the potential?
Yeah. And just to be clear, not just physical potential, but emotional and spiritual potential.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's the worst thing about him is he's a babe on all fronts.
Yeah, I hate those people.
It's the worst. Yeah. I had to keep saying to her, listen, your standard for men is way too high. We are not all like your husband. It's just, that's where I think it's like dating becomes a place where you're assessing potential, right?
Yeah, but again, I think what I'm saying is not just potential looks or common interest. The biggest potential you're assessing is their potential for spiritual maturity.
Yeah,
that's actually the best thing you're trying to assess in dating. that will be the greatest gift that you can take forward into marriage.
Yeah. That's that's learnability, I guess, rather than teachability. It's humility.
Yep.
It's how does a person handle themselves in conflict, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yeah, because implicit in that is marriage is going to be hard because it is.
yeah.
So it's not about the curveballs that are thrown, it's how you respond to them.
Oh, and there's so many fights. There's so many fights you could have.
Yep.
And so you have to learn this graciousness and compassion that you've never had before. You know, I often heard it described, you single is a square. And then when you get married, it knocks the corners off it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have children, you become a circle. You just basically get sanded so you don't have hard edges anymore.
Yep.
And I think that's a really beautiful analogy for the grace and the humility that Christ is teaching you.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, and that's nice. But you can see that in a person with the way they argue,
Yep.
their opinions on stuff,
Yep.
their willingness to learn, their willingness to listen.
Yep.
Just egotists just talk about themselves all the time. It's
Yep.
like, shh.
Yep.
Anyway.
It's good.
All right. As two obnoxiously ignorant people on this podcast, feel free to send us some thoughts on this. And I think at some stage in the future, what we need to do, Chris, is have two single folks who are in the thick of dating.
Dating one another.
No. Just two individuals who
Yep.
are in the dating scene,
Yep.
who are not necessarily dating one another,
Yep.
come on and actually give us a fair critique.
Tell us what the kids are doing.
And how stupid we are. Anyway, but as part of the conversations, we're cracking the door to have a larger conversation.
Yep.
So, all right, we'll see you again next week. Leave comments. If you're on Spotify, you can do that through the app. Otherwise, jump on our Discord channel.
You might find someone on our Discord channel. Imagine.
Nah, not right now. just three-legged donkeys on the Discord.
Don't call our audience three-legged donkeys, Duncan.
Beautiful humans.
You are beautiful people.
All right, see you next week.
Bye.